The letter arrived at sunset, wrapped in red silk and sealed with gold. To the traveler who tells good stories, it began. Tonight, you will join the king's private night feast. I am Basat, a road storyteller. I sing for bread and sleep under stars. I never expected a palace door to open for me, but the guard at the city gate waved me through like I was a prince. My heart beat fast. My feet were dusty. My shirt was simple. Still, the letters said my name, and the seal was real. Inside the palace, lamps burned like small suns. Floors shone like water. A line of servants in blue stood like a river on both sides. They did not smile. They did not blink. They watched me the way hawks watch a field. A steward with silver hair met me. Welcome, Rafi, he said softly. The king enjoys truth and wine. Speak well. Drink slowly. He guided me along a long hallway with paintings of smiling Kingzong, handsome, shining crowns. Their eyes followed me. I told myself it was the lamplight, but my skin felt cold. At the end of the hall, a pair of doors stood taller than any tree I had seen. The steward touched the gold handle. Music rolled out. Drums, flutes, laughter, the clink of cups. Remember? He whispered. After midnight, the rules change. He pushed the doors open. Light hit my face like day. I stepped in. And the first thing I saw was a king dancing on a table, holding a golden cup like a sword. Chapter 2. The Golden Hall. The hall looked like a dream made of coins. Around them were lords and ladies in silk, laughing as if laughing were a job. The Lion King noticed me first. Ah, our storyteller, he roared. Come closer. We drink to truth tonight. A servant placed a cup in my hand. The wine smelled like flowers and fire. I took a careful sip. It went down warm, then hot, then almost sweet. Sing for us, said the young king, tapping the table like a child. Game of Cups, shouted the young king, standing on his chair. 3 rounds. Winner takes the crown of laughter. Servants rushed out bowls of dried fruit, lemon slices, and tiny metal bells. The rules were simple and silly. Every time the bell rang, you had to pass your cup left. If a lemon slice fell out, you had to tell a secret. If you dropped a bell, you had to sing. The hall became wild bells ringing, cups sliding, people shouting and laughing. The Lion King cheated openly, switching cups when no one looked. The Moon King played slow and careful, fingers steady, eyes watching everything. The young king, he wanted noise. He threw lemon slices into the air like coins and told secrets that were probably lies. I tried to keep up. The wine was stronger than it smelled. My head felt warm. My heart felt brave. Someone pressed a golden grape into my hand. Someone else pushed me. Toward the dancers, a drumbeat crawled into my bones. Your turn, storyteller, the young king cried. A bell slipped from his sleeve into my cup. He grinned. Oops! The bell rang. I had to sing. I sang a funny line about a goat who married a queen. The hall exploded with laughter. The Lion King slapped the table. The Moon King smiled with his eyes, not his mouth. Then the castle clock struck once. The sound cut through the hall like a knife through silk. The lady in emerald leaned close again and whispered, Listen carefully, traveler. In this hall, truth is not just words. Truth costs! And somewhere, Behind the music that was no longer playing, I heard a small sound like a lock turning in a distant door. The mood in the hall shifted, the air thickened, and the laughter from moments ago felt far away, like a dream. The music had stopped completely. A strange silence hung in the space, broken only by the sound of the clock ticking slowly, like a heart counting every second. The Moon King, who had been calm all night, now had a serious look. "True stories," he said, his voice low, "reveal more than we like." The Lion King laughed. "Y'all are taking this too seriously?" He grabbed a golden goblet and swirled the wine inside, making it splash on the table. "You know, I once drank a whole lake to prove a point." The table erupted in laughter, but it felt forced. Even the dancers paused and stared. I couldn't help it! I leaned forward, sensing something deeper in the air. "Tell me about this lake," I said, half joking, but it came out serious. The Lion King's grin faded just a little. He cleared his throat. "A joke, traveler. Just a joke!" The Moon King's eyes sharpened. "It was no joke," he muttered. "That lake ... still calls for him." I looked around the table. The laughter was gone. The smiles were frozen. And the servants who had been moving silently between the guests had stopped. They stood in quiet rows, their faces blank, their eyes staring straight ahead. A servant who had been standing by the wall stepped forward. His hands shook slightly, but his voice was steady. "My lord," he said to the Moon King, "the door is locked again." The Moon King nodded slowly. "Let it stay that way," he said. There was a pause, and then the young king stood up suddenly, his face bright again, like nothing had happened. "A toast," he cried, raising his goblet high. "To the truth." But as the goblets were lifted, I noticed the lady in emerald, the one who had whispered to me earlier. Her eyes were wide with worry. She caught my gaze, and for the first time, her lips parted in a silent warning. She knew something! Before I could ask, the door at the far end of the hall creaked loud enough for everyone to hear. The locked door, the one no one dared open. Chapter 5. The mask slips. The king's private night feast was supposed to be a celebration. But as the night stretched on, the mask of happiness began to crack. The laughter became louder, but there was no joy in it. The wine seemed to be flowing faster than ever, and the faces of the kings began to blur like the golden cups they held. The Moon King had begun to speak to the servants in low whispers, his voice barely audible. He told them to check on something, but no one else seemed to hear. The Lion King, though he smiled, kept glancing over at the clock like he was waiting for something. Then it happened. The young king, usually the life of the party, stood up suddenly, his face pale. I cannot drink any more," he muttered, his words slurring. His hand shook as he tried to lift his cup. The room went silent as everyone stared at him. "You can't stop now, boy," the Lion King growled. He slammed his cup on the table, spilling wine everywhere. A king never stops drinking, not in front of others. The young king looked lost. His eyes were wide, almost scared. "But I've drunk too much." He looked around as though he was trying to find something or someone to steady himself. It was then that I noticed something strange. The servants, those silent watchers who had stood all night, had moved closer, their eyes fixed on the kings. Their faces were hard to read, but their presence was more like shadows than people. "I think," the young king whispered, his voice shaking, "I think it's time to tell the truth." The hall went still. Even the candles seemed to flicker slower, their flames dancing in time with the tension. The Moon King stood up, but his eyes were cold. "Tell the truth!" the Lion King spat. "You've been drinking the truth all night, boy. What more is there to say?" The young king opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked as though he might fall at any moment. And then I heard the faintest sound, like a key turning in a lock. The locked door. The one that no one wanted opened. It was unlocking. Chapter 6. The Chamber of Secrets. The clock struck midnight. Everything happened in a blur. The young king collapsed back into his chair. His eyes were wide and unfocused, as though he could see something that no one else could. The Moon King looked down at him, his expression unreadable. The sound of the door unlocking grew louder. Slowly, like a whisper, it creaked open. There was a shadow inside that none of us could see, but it felt like it was staring directly at me. I could feel it! The lady in emerald moved quickly, standing up with a sharp motion, her chair scraping against the floor. This night was not meant for the truth, she whispered, almost to herself. But I could hear her. You were never supposed to know. She rushed forward, grabbing my arm. You have to leave. Now! Her voice was urgent, and her grip on my arm was tight, like she was afraid the truth would tear her apart if she stayed. But what's behind that door? I asked, trying to break free from a grip. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. She hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the door. The locked door was open now, and a low, eerie glow spilled out from behind it. For a moment, it looked like the very air in the room was alive with it. She pulled me toward the exit. You won't understand! None of us do! But it was too late. The room went silent once more, but this time it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a storm about to break. And from behind the door, I heard a voice, low and dark. The crown is not just for kings. The air in the hall was thick now, like the weight of a storm hanging low. I could feel the chill on my skin. But the room was warm with too many bodies, too many eyes. The glow from behind the open door flickered like a flame struggling to stay alive. The crown is not just for kings, the voice had said. I turned back toward the door, but the lady in emerald held my arm tighter. Don't, she whispered, but her voice cracked. Don't look at it. But it was too late. The shadows moved, shifting like they were alive, stretching toward us. And then, in the dim light, I saw the truth. It wasn't just wine on the table anymore. It was something darker. Something red. The Moon King was holding his goblet, but it wasn't wine that filled it. His hands shook as he raised the cup to his lips. And when he drank, it wasn't like before. It wasn't casual. It was desperate, as though he was trying to swallow something that wouldn't go down easily. This isn't a toast, I said, more to myself than anyone else. The Lion King grinned widely. But this is the last toast. Traveler, the blood that binds us. His eyes were wild, shining with a madness I hadn't seen before. In the end, all kings drink this. To remember what we are? My heart raced. What do you mean? I asked, barely able to speak. He turned to me, his smile fading, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of something terrifying, like the man behind the crown had vanished, leaving only the monster. We are not just kings, the Lion King whispered. We are the keepers of the crown's blood, and the blood calls us back every time. The chamber filled with a low hum, like a song from far away. The door creaked again, and something moved in the shadows. I couldn't make out the figure, but I could feel its presence in the room, heavy, like a ghost waiting for its turn. Chapter 8. A Hidden Diary. The lady in emerald pushed me back, guiding me toward the side of the room where the light was dimmer. You don't understand, she murmured, what they are hiding. It's not just a story. It's the curse of the crown. I felt sick to my stomach. The words didn't make sense, but somehow I knew I had to learn the truth, no matter how dark it was. Where do I go? I asked her, my voice shaking. What's behind that door? The lady in emerald glanced at the open door again, her eyes wide with fear. She shook her head. You don't want to know. No one does. But you need to see it for yourself, if you want to survive this night. She led me toward a small, hidden corner near the back of the hall. There, on a wooden table covered in dust, was an old, leather-bound book, its edges worn from age. The gold lettering on the cover had faded, but it still glowed faintly in the dim light. She picked it up gently. This is the truth. This is their secret. I opened the book, and as I flipped through its pages, the words became clear. The kings were not just rulers of land. They were bound to the crown by blood. The crown itself, ancient and cursed, had a history of taking lives, of consuming the souls of those who wore it. The crown of silence, I whispered aloud. The book told a story of betrayal, murder, and love lost to madness. It was said that the kings would drink from the blood chalice to keep their power, to ensure their rule was unbroken by time. But at a price. The crown would always demand more. Chapter 9. The ghost of the banquet. As I read, the room began to grow colder, and the shadows deepened. The music had stopped completely. I could hear the faint sound of footsteps, soft, like a woman walking on velvet. Then, I saw her. A figure appeared in the doorway, the faintest outline of a woman in a flowing gown, her face pale and sad, like she had been crying for centuries. She floated into the room, her feet not touching the ground. The kings didn't seem to notice her, but I did. She was real, though she didn't belong here. The lady in emerald gasped. It's her, the queen, the one who never left. The woman in the doorway stepped forward slowly, her eyes locked on me. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. The kings continued their ritual, unaware of the ghostly presence. The air grew heavier with each step she took. The lady in emerald grabbed my arm, her grip tight. She's come to warn you. The truth is never free. If you know too much, you'll be trapped in the same way they are. I stood frozen, unable to move or speak. The ghost's eyes locked with mine, and for the briefest moment, I could feel her sorrow, her pain. It was as though she had been waiting for someone to listen, waiting for someone to understand. She reached toward me, her hand cold as ice. I didn't pull away. She whispered, "You are not the first to seek the crown's truth, and you will not be the last." Before I could respond, the ghost vanished, leaving a cold chill in the room. The air snapped back into place, and the king seemed to notice nothing at all. The clock had struck once more, but this time it didn't feel like just the passing of time. It felt like a warning. The cold silence in the hall pressed in around me like a thick fog. The lady in emerald still held my arm, her eyes filled with a fear I couldn't understand. Her warning echoed in my ears. The truth is never free. But what truth? What secret were the kings hiding? And why had the ghost of the queen appeared? The clock ticked again, louder now, each beat like a drum in my chest. My mind raced as I glanced toward the open door. The darkness beyond it called to me, but I knew stepping into it might be the last thing I'd ever do. Suddenly, the young king stood up, his voice trembling. I can't go on with this anymore. I can't be part of it! I froze. His words hung in the air, like a warning. The Lion King's hand slammed on the table, the noise sharp and sudden. "You fool!" he roared. "You know what happens when you stop? The blood calls us. It doesn't let us leave." The Moon King, who had been strangely quiet, now spoke up, his voice calm but laced with cold fury. "We drink the blood to stay in power. To rule! To live forever." He turned to face me, but not everyone can handle the price. Some break. I didn't know what to say. My thoughts were jumbled. The wine, the blood, the ghosts. Everything seemed to blur together. The lady in emerald whispered to me, her voice shaky, "You don't have to stay. You can leave. Escape while you still can!" I looked toward the open door again, my heart pounding. But something deep inside told me that if I left now, I might never know the full truth. Something I couldn't ignore kept me rooted in place. And then, the final twist came. Chapter 11. The final toast. As the clock struck once more, the air grew thick. I could feel the change, the moment when time itself seemed to hold its breath. The young king stood alone, trembling, a cup of wine in his hand. "It's time." The Lion King's voice was almost a growl. "One last toast to the blood that binds us." The Moon King nodded, and without another word, he raised his goblet, his eyes distant. The wine, now stained with something darker, was passed around once more. My hand shook as the cup was placed in front of me. I stared at it, unsure whether to drink, to refuse, or to run. The lady in emerald stood still, watching, her eyes wide with fear. "You don't know what you're doing?" she whispered. "The last toast seals your fate. You'll be just like them! Trapped forever." I could feel the weight of the room, the eyes of the kings on me. the blood and the wine staring back at me, daring me to drink. But before I could make a decision, the door at the far end of the hall suddenly slammed shut. The noise was deafening. I turned just in time to see a dark figure step into the room. It was the ghost of the queen, again this time more solid, her eyes wide and frantic. She moved with purpose, walking straight toward the Moon King. "No!" she cried, her voice finally breaking through the silence. "You can't do this anymore!" "It's over." The kings froze, their cups hovering in midair. The lady in emerald gasped, but the Moon King didn't flinch. "It is too late, my queen," he said coldly, his voice like ice. "The crown is ours, and we can't let it go." The ghost stepped closer, her face twisted with sorrow. "You've all been living a lie." And then the unthinkable happened. The ghost's form began to shimmer, and with a soft cry, she reached for the crown on the Moon King's head. As her fingers brushed the gold, something began to happen. The light from the crown dimmed. The king's face twisted in pain. A dark, shadowy figure appeared behind him, as if the crown itself was pulling him into the abyss. "You wanted power?" the ghost whispered. "But this is the price you pay!" The Moon King screamed, his voice full of terror and regrettage. His body started to disappear into the shadows, leaving nothing behind but the crown. The room fell into dead silence. No one moved. Chapter 12. The ending quote. The lady in emerald finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. "It's over. The curse is broken." But as she spoke, I realized something. The truth wasn't what I had thought. The crown wasn't just a symbol of power, it was alive. It consumed those who wore it, turning them into slaves of their own greed. The kings had been nothing more than pawns in a game they couldn't escape. "You've seen too much," she said, looking at me with sad eyes. "But I'm glad you saw it. Now you understand." The ghost of the queen faded slowly, her form vanishing like mist. The hall was silent again, the only sound the ticking of the clock that had long since stopped counting the time. I stood there, staring at the empty throne, the shattered crown at my feet. The kings were gone, one into the shadows. The others lost to the curse of the crown. The lady in emerald took a deep breath. "Sometimes the darkest truths are the hardest to bear. But now you are free." I turned to leave, the weight of the night heavy on my shoulders. As I passed through the door, I looked back one last time. The golden hall was empty, its glory faded. And above, the sky stretched out dark and endless, but for the first time, free of kings.